What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel, I hope you're doing well. In one of my recent videos I talked about anamorphic lenses and how you can use them to give the footage shot on your phone more of a cinematic look to it. Well, with today's video I wanted to expand on that a little further and go into why you might also want to use an ND filter when shooting video, either with or without any lens attachments on your phone. I'll show you some of the kit that you'll need to mount the filters, as well as show you some footage comparisons shot both with and without an ND. If you're totally new to ND filters, I'll explain a little bit about how they work and how you can use them to make your footage look smoother and more cinematic looking using something called the 180-degree rule. But if you're just here to see the adapters and ND filters, then feel free to jump around using the timestamps in the description. Now before we take a look at the gear, I just wanted to show you some footage comparisons shot both with and without an ND filter so you can get a sense of how it can change and improve the look of your footage. So here we are shooting outdoors with an iPhone 12 Pro Max and the Moment Pro camera app, which gives me full control over the camera settings when shooting. I'm shooting at 24 frames per second without an ND filter at the moment, and because it's so bright outside, I've had to really crank up the shutter speed so that the footage isn't overexposed. Ideally at 24 FPS, I want to be shooting at 148 per second shutter speed, which is double the frame rate, to get that nice smooth cinematic blur in the footage. This is something known as the 180-degree shutter rule. But trying to shoot at 148 per second shutter speed, where it's just so bright, is going to make the footage way too overexposed, so I'm having to use a much faster shutter speed to compensate, which is going to make my footage look a bit choppy and stuttery, as you can hopefully see here as I wave my hand around a bit. If you've never heard of or used ND filters before, ND stands for neutral density, and simply put, you can think of these as like sunglasses but for your camera. They allow you to reduce and control the amount of light coming into the camera so that you can shoot at the desired shutter speed. This is a variable ND filter from Freewell, which we'll take a closer look at later. But I just wanted to explain that variable ND just means that the filter can be rotated to adjust the amount of light that passes through it. So now with the ND filter at its lowest density mounted over the camera, and again shooting at 24 FPS and 148 per second shutter speed, the footage is still overexposed. But if I now rotate the ND filter, I can increase the density strength and reduce the amount of light coming through to the camera until it's exposed correctly. And now if I wave my hand around, you'll notice how much smoother the motion looks at 148 per second shutter, compared to shooting at a much faster shutter speed without an ND. Here's another comparison, this time with a lot more motion as I pan the camera from side to side. You can really see the difference in how much smoother the footage looks. And this all comes down to the 180-degree shutter rule, shooting with your shutter speed at double your frame rate. This is standard practice in filmmaking as it mimics the way that our eyes see motion in real life. Just look at how smoothly this bird flies into the frame. When you hear people talking about the cinematic look of footage, this is often one of the things that they're talking about. And your eyes are so used to seeing footage shot like this in films that when you follow the rule with your own footage, it can really change the way that it feels and make it feel a lot more high-end and not just like video shot on a smartphone. And if you really want to get that cinematic look, you can use an ND filter with an anamorphic lens, which naturally adds the black bars to the top and bottom of the frame, whilst also giving you an even wider field of view and some nice edge distortion. If you want to see more of the anamorphic lens, check out my recent video about it, which I'll link to below. So now let's look at the adapters you'll need to mount the filters to your phone or your Moment lenses. I've got here a few different adapter options from Moment, a couple of ND filters made by Freewell, and one made by Gobe. You might also see these under the name Earth, which is the company's new brand name. Starting with the filter adapters first, Moment's 37 and 67mm phone adapters are both for using right over your iPhone's cameras without a lens attached. Each one is for either 37 or 67mm filter sizes respectively, and both mount to your phone slightly differently. Made from stainless steel, the 37mm is the smallest and lightest of the two, weighing in at 19 grams. To attach it to your phone you're going to need a Moment case, as this uses the same bayonet mount as all of Moment's M-series lenses, meaning it can only be used over either the wide or telephoto camera. It has a 37mm size thread, so you can mount to it any filter of the same size. But for those without a Moment case, the larger 67mm slides right onto your phone and is secured in place by this padded screw. However, this does partially cover your screen, so that's something to be aware of when using it. This adapter works with larger 67mm filters and is large enough to cover the entire triple lens setup on the back of a 12 Pro Max, meaning that as well as the wide and telephoto, you can also use this over the ultra-wide camera as well. The housing is made from a precision machined aluminium and is slightly heavier than the 37mm at 26 grams. And for anyone wondering, the screw mount is big enough for you to use this over a case if you need to, up to a maximum case thickness of 15.5mm. Now you might prefer this setup over the 37mm adapter, as with this one you can easily switch between all your cameras without having to remove and remount it. The other advantage is you can use it over the front camera if you'd like to use it for vlogging, for example. Of course then it will cover a big part of the screen, but I know that some people like to see and have at least some idea of what they're shooting when they're talking to camera. Or you might prefer the 37mm for its smaller footprint, making it more portable and discreet. For using filters with moment lenses, there's the 67mm lens filter mount. This one is very similar to the 67mm phone mount, but instead of sliding onto your phone, it slides right onto your moment lenses, and comes with these little removable collars for mounting it to each different lens size. You get 3 of these in total, one for the 18mm wide and 58mm tele, a square one for the blue and gold flare anamorphics, and another for using with the 10x macro, the 15mm fisheye, and the older and now discontinued 60mm tele. The only moment lens that you can't use this with is the 14mm fisheye, so it works with the 15mm but not the 14. Again, it's made from a precision machined aluminium and weighs a little less than the other 67mm adapter at around 17 grams. It's also worth mentioning that all of the adapters come with a microfiber carry pouch too, which is nice, so they're not going to be rattling around loose in your bag. And you have somewhere to keep all of the lens collars together. Now the lens adapter is just for mounting filters to your lenses. You can't use it directly with your phone. So if you're wanting to use filters both with and without lenses, you're going to need to pick up the lens adapter and at least one of the phone adapters. Personally, my recommendation after using all 3 of them is to get the 2 67mm versions. I just think that it's easier and more manageable having 2 adapters that both fit the same size 67mm filters, as this just means that you're not having to go and buy 2 different size filters to use with your adapters, which can add up pretty quickly. Now there's nothing bad about the 37mm if you're just looking for something to use with your phone, no lenses, and you think that you'll prefer it over the other phone adapter, then by all means go for it, it's a solid choice. But for those with needs for both, I think that the 2 67mm adapters are the way to go. These aren't just for using with ND filters either, you can also use them with diffusion filters or polarization filters, or any 37 or 67mm threaded filters that you have. Price-wise, the 37mm adapter comes in at $20, and both the 67mm adapters at $30 each. I'll put some links in the description for you to check them out. Now when it comes to ND filters, there are a whole bunch of them to choose from, and I'm not really in a position to be able to compare lots of different brands against each other, so I've just gone for a couple of different options to fit the different size adapters that I've heard and seen good reviews of. First up, I've got a budget-friendly 37mm ND made by Gobe or Earth, which can be rotated from ND2 to ND400, which is equivalent to 1 stop to 8.66 stops. On variables with a wide range like this, you can sometimes get things like cross-polarization or colour shift in the image, which of course you don't want. In my use of it, I have noticed a slight amount of vignetting in the corners as you're nearing the maximum limit of the ND, which is something to be aware of if you're wanting to get the cleanest possible image or use the filter to shoot in very bright sunny conditions. Printed on the side, it has a strength guide, but it doesn't actually stop as you're rotating it, so it can be hard to know where exactly the maximum and minimum densities are. And if you do exceed the max limit, that's when you'll really start to see the effects of cross-polarization in your footage. And if you're wondering how it gets this name, you can hopefully see here the dark cross shape that it makes. It also comes with a cleaning cloth and this comically large tin for protection. I'm guessing that they use the same tin for the larger filter sizes too, hence why it's so big. It doesn't come with any sort of lens cap, which is a shame, but overall I think it's an okay choice if you're just starting out or you're on a budget, as it costs under £30 or around $37. Its tiny size also makes it the lightest at just 15 grams. Just be careful not to push it too far to avoid any vignetting or cross-polarization. Now for the larger 67mm adapters, I wanted to get something a bit more high-end, as I wanted a good quality ND to use not only with my phone, but also with my Sony a7 III, which is the main camera that I shoot with on the channel. So from Freewell, I've got 2 of their filters, they're standard day and bright day variable NDs. The standard day is an ND4 to ND32 filter, equivalent to 2 to 5 stops, and is for using more in the morning or evening or on overcast cloudy days. Whereas the bright day is a stronger ND64 to ND512 filter, equivalent to 6 to 9 stops, and is for using in very bright sunny conditions like in the midday sun. Splitting the filters into two smaller ranges like this prevents any sort of vignetting or cross-polarization happening like we see in the Gobe. However, they will add a slight warmish tint to your footage, but you can easily compensate for this in camera by adjusting your white balance or by colour grading in post. On the side they have f-stop numbers printed on them, so you know exactly how many stops of light you're going down by as you rotate them, and they physically stop rotating as you reach the maximum and minimum. They also come with a cleaning cloth and these really cool magnetic lens covers which just snap on. I love anything with magnets. And these plastic card cases which do the job, but they do feel a little bit cheap and bulky. The build quality of the filters is excellent though, weighing in at 50 grams without the lens cover. They're really solid and have a really nice smoothness to them as you rotate them. I do prefer the Freewells overall, they just feel more premium, but that is also reflected in the price as these cost around £110 or $110 each. And unfortunately they don't make a smaller 37mm version for use with the 37mm filter adapter. In order to properly use ND filters while shooting, you're also going to need a camera app that lets you manually control your settings so that you can set and lock your shutter speed. Personally, I like to use Filmic Pro, as well as the Moment Pro camera app that you saw earlier. And remember that to get that nice cinematic motion blur, you need to follow the 180° shutter rule by setting your shutter speed to double your frame rate. So if you're shooting at 25 frames per second, you want to set your shutter speed to 1/50. At 30 FPS, 1/60, and at 60 FPS, 1/120. You get the idea. The only odd one to remember is if you're shooting at 24 FPS, as some cameras or camera apps don't properly support 1/48 of a second shutter speeds. So you should use 1/48 if you can, but if not, go with 1/50 instead. And all this is stuff that applies when using actual cameras too, so if you're wanting to get into filmmaking but you only have access to the camera on your phone at the moment, you can grab yourself a few accessories and practice some of these filmmaking techniques, knowing that you can put them to good use later on. So there we have it. I'll leave some links for all of the filter adapters and the ND filters that I've shown in the video today in the description below. I think that using an ND filter is a great way to sort of up the quality of the video shot on your phone. It just makes it look that much more cinematic and a lot less like phone video. If you've enjoyed this video or you've learned something new, give it a like and let me know. I have had to simplify a few things today, so if you've got any questions or there's something you're unsure of, then drop a comment below. I'm usually pretty good at replying to your comments. Hit the subscribe button and the bell if you'd like to see more tech or tech accessory content from myself. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.